thank you for joining us today, Keith.
Great. Thank you very much, Teresa. I appreciate it.
Well, I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you about your book. It's a great manual for really living mindfully and very straightforward, and I appreciated that, as well as the reflections and exercises that you have at the end of each chapter. So I thought it was really great, and I appreciate it.
Oh, good. Thanks. It took a while, and most of the book was written during the pandemic, so I had some time. Yeah, had some time to reflect. Yeah.
I'm hoping lots of people did some reflecting during this, and of course, it's not over yet, but hopefully soon.
Mhm.
Um, Speaking of that, because a lot of people are feeling a little out of whack, one of the things you talk about is, for the purpose of the book, is to find balance in an unbalanced world. And I
Mhm.
get a lot of questions about how to balance between work, life, all kinds of situations. And I was just curious if you have any thoughts about why we've become so unbalanced in our lives.
Hmm. It's a really good question, and the title of the book um, and the book itself is really about uh, a whole life, a whole balanced approach towards mindfulness and living mindfully every day. And so the 8 strategies are there to really help balance us up. And part of the problem, I think, really is really, quite frankly, is trauma. I think we've moved into a society that is dealing with loads of trauma. It's either implicit or explicit trauma. So implicitly, we're getting trauma through the news, we're getting trauma through our TV, through the movies. You don't hear a lot about good news. You hear a lot about, trauma-filled news. And the movies themselves are really around the end of the world. I mean, there are very few movies that aren't about the end of the world or some alien being coming to save the world or some other thing. So, and the thing about trauma, certainly implicit trauma or explicit trauma, which is, really around a family person dying, someone being sick, something explicitly where we've gotten into an accident or there's some other issue that's going on. I mean, either implicit or explicit, it wires itself into the nervous system. You don't necessarily know that you've got it. It actually fires the brain and the cortisol levels in the brain and in the body through the amygdala, and then through the kidneys, and we wind up with a lot of adrenaline. We're a coffee-based society. Lots of people have coffee, so that actually feeds into the adrenaline rush, and then trauma feeds on itself. So when we're not in a trauma state, or we're not in a state of fight or flight, we're really wondering what's wrong. And that's where this default mode network, the part of our brain, the brain is always in problem mode. It's always in seeking an issue or a problem to solve, right? So, what's really happening in a lot of cases is we feel that we can't sit still. We have to be involved with something. We have to be doing something. We have to react in a certain way that really is not necessarily compassionate, that really, we're in traffic and suddenly the traffic's not moving fast enough and we become agitated and so on. So I think in so many ways we're seeking balance, but we're looking at the wrong things. So the food that we eat in our society is really very much of it is sugar based, or is simple carb based, and that turns into sugar. We don't get enough real exercise in the society. We're the only society in the world that has a real issue, not only in terms of the food that we waste, but the obesity of the individuals. And we've got so many problems in terms of diabetes and heart issues. And so I think we need to, move away from the vehicle, put our hands up and move away from the vehicle in some way and start to take stock. Instead of living from the outside in, start living from the inside out. And that really is a big part of what the book is about. How do we live from the inside out versus the outside in, the things that really traumatize us? And then in the outside in area, how do we really put space between ourselves and those things that traumatize us? So that really is the essence of the book in a number of areas. And it really is about finding balance in those areas in an unbalanced world. So,
Yeah, I think it's very needed right now. As I said, it's one of the most common questions I get is how do you balance life? And I
mhm.
totally agree. There's got to be a shift to the inside out because it starts there. And when we get the inside balanced, it's much easier to deal with what's happening all around us on the outside. So I
Mm,
definitely appreciate that.
mm, yeah.
You mentioned exercise,
Mhm.
and in the book, you talk about the importance of it not only to increase mindfulness, but to improve memory. So I'm wondering, why is exercise such a must?
Well, I mean, one of the things that happens is you have to realize that, when we're talking about mindfulness, it's not like the brain is sitting outside of the rest of the body, right? It's part and parcel of the body, and it's interconnected. So we've got this neurology, the neuroscience of the brain is, the feel good chemicals are serotonin, oxytocin, a sense of connectedness, a sense of balance, dopamine, having the dopamine receptors. So when we're exercising and we're actually generating energy, and we have that ability to go ahead and sweat and have the respiration system work, have our breath work, have our bodies connected to our brains. We have a sense of wellness. We have a sense of uh, the ability to burn off calories, the ability to use all of the areas of the body. So, a good example is, think about how you might feel if you had a small little um, splinter in your toe, right? And that just a teeny little splinter in your toe. And that would be, excruciating. You wouldn't be able to think, you wouldn't be able to concentrate, you wouldn't be able to do that, anything for that matter. So if we're not exercising, it's like the exercise allows us to take out the creaks and the cracks and use the muscles and actually get the blood flowing and get the serotonin and the dopamine and the adrenaline working. So we're really what it's doing is it's self-generating energy, and we are the recipients of that when we're able to do that, and we're able to think more clearly, and we're able to really step away from stress in a more significant way as we're able to handle it. It's I love this. I love the saying that the Marines have in their recruitment poster. I'm a vet, and a lot of the book was really based on a lot of the work that I did when I was in the service. But the Marines have the saying that strength is the weakness leaving your body, and I love that kind of concept, because what we're doing is we're generating more strength, we're generating more resilience, we're generating the ability to really be more with our breath. That's also a very big part of what I've talked about in the book is the idea of breath. The idea of what I call spir. The root word of breath in Latin is spir, S-P-I-R, which is the same word for spirit, or for aspiration, or for inspiration, or for respiration, or for expiration. So it's just a question of what level do we want to use the breath at. And I think when we're at our optimal self and we're connected to our body and our mind, we're able to aspire for more things in the world and actually bring the breath into our actions and breathe life into what our hopes and dreams and plans are. So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Another area, and again, related, or that's gotten much, I would say, drastically worse over the past couple
Mm,
of years, is sleep. So a
mm,
lot of people are having trouble sleeping. They're not sleeping not long enough. They're not getting quality rest. And you talk about this in the book, and I'm wondering if you could share why rest is so important to our well-being, and what are some examples of how we can recharge mindfully?
mm. So, yeah, one of the things that's happening is that, as I said before, with trauma, we tend to worry a lot, and our minds tend to race. And this mind up here, there's an area of the brain, I mentioned it before, the default mode network, and this is the self-referential area of the brain that's always working. It's the part of the brain that is solving problems. And when there are no problems to solve, it actually turns inward and it starts saying, what's wrong? If what's wrong with you, or what's wrong with this, or what's wrong with that. And it starts looking for problems. That's what the purpose of the brain is. It's a problem solver or a meaning making machine. When we go to sleep at night, it's really an opportunity for our brain to download or uh, uh, sort out, if you will, the problems of the world and really just kind of rest, be in a rest state. And that's what dreams are about. I mean, that's the beauty of dreams is, it allows us to really take a little vacation, take some time off, and come back to a refreshed state. It's sort of like, having too many windows open on your computer, right? After a while, you don't have enough random access memory. You don't have the ability to do any more processing. And unless you turn it off and unless you reboot, you really don't have that refresh state, the ability to go ahead and have new thoughts or new aspirations or new dreams or new visions. So part of the process of turning off at night is to really step away from media, step away from all media. Doing that an hour ahead of time is always a good way to do that, and to start turning the lights low, to start looking at ways of, turning off things, and that's again another signal for the brain. It allows the uh, pineal gland to go ahead and start being activated, which is also known as the third eye. It's that area of the brain that really starts to secrete melatonin. And it's that area of the brain that starts to make us a little tired at night. Refrain from a lot of sweets, sugars. A lot of people have sweet tooths. And, there's ways that I start talking about in the book in terms of food or fuel, and really start to regulating that if you can, to with something as simple as if you like ice cream, regulate yourself on that. Instead of having a whole pint of Haagen-Dazs, go for start to savor just a spoonful or a little teeny piece of chocolate or whatever, but start to tone down, and then put on some pleasant music. Start to unwind, start to give yourself a break. And reading is always a nice way to do it. Most people use their devices to read. But if you can, start to look at, a magazine or a book or whatever. And then, set up your bed, use a cool room, bring the temperature down. Generally, for the body, it's best if your room is set at 64, 65 degrees. Even cooler would be fine. The body likes to, snuggle up underneath the covers, and then really start to talk yourself down. And one of the things that we talk about in the book is to do a body scan, to look at doing a full body scan where you're literally checking in with yourself and telling your brain, okay, time to shut down. And then, moving your awareness from your head to your face, to your neck, to your shoulders, to the upper torso, all the way down to the toes, if you can make it that long, because that's all part of the beauty of at least starting to settle down and giving yourself that space. So it's really around self-soothing, and many people have not learned how to self-soothe. And I think that's part of the learning process, is to self-soothe, to allow yourself to shut down all of the windows, including all of the spaces in the body, and then, reboot and wake up refreshed and renewed. And that really gives yourself an opportunity. It gives us all an opportunity to give some space and give some breath to some new, ways of thinking. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I would suggest to all of our listeners that if you don't yet value the importance of rest, and not just sleeping too, I think we need little restful breaks during the day, even if it's 1 or 2 minutes, but just a chance to breathe and calm down and then go back to what we're doing. But I would suggest just try it one night and notice the difference in how you feel the next day versus how you feel not getting good rest every night, which is really a problem right now. So thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sharing.
Well, Teresa, I don't know if you remember, but I've started to learn how to take naps. And in the book, I had my wife had insisted that I put in this picture of me taking a nap. And it's not necessarily a flattering picture, but still the same. We all deserve it. We all deserve a little nap, a little closing of the eyes. And even if that's just a closing of your eyes and sitting down where you are, doing a self check-in, an awareness again of the body, of the breath, of where we're at, and having a mindful moment, I think that's really important.
It is. It's funny. I'm always envious because I am not a power napper. I'm a person who, if I nap, it's like 3 hours. So I
Right.
cannot take a nap during the day. I always want to, but I do take really regular pauses where I may just sit outside, notice my breath for a little while, come back in here. But it makes an enormous difference. And it's more productive. I keep trying to tell people you're not wasting time. You'll get more done if you do it. I mean, I just wrote yesterday something about the difference between the doing mode and the being mode
Mm.
of the mind. And we don't spend enough time in the being mode. And so that's another form of rest. So even if you can't nap, I keep trying. I'm going to get there someday. But even if you can't nap, I agree with you. Just taking those pauses to check in or to notice your breath, or, I love stepping outside. I don't even have to think about the fact that I'm resting for a minute. It immediately changes really how I feel, how I'm being,
Hmm.
just to step outside, notice nature, and come back to work. So thank you
Right.
for that.
Isn't that true? That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, During the shutdowns, well, I don't know, they're coming back, I guess, but whatever. But during the longer shutdowns that we had over the last 2 years, a lot of people did notice that perhaps their environments were not conducive to relaxing or being mindful or feeling comfortable, or, a wide variety of things. I noticed a lot of things I've never noticed, and I changed a lot of things in my home.
Hmm.
But you discuss this in the book about how we can't always control our environments, say, for instance, at an office. But you give us a few tips on improving the spaces, whether it's at home or at work. And I was wondering if you could just share a couple of those with our listeners in case it might prompt some ideas for them.
Sure. This is probably one of my favorite chapters in the book, because I really do treasure, the ability to really change our environment, and there's simple things, there are little things. Having plants, having the ability to clean your clutter, clean your space and have a fairly well ordered space. It's cleaning your clutter with feng shui. I talk about feng shui in the book. And, there's the whole idea of element theory in feng shui and Taoist philosophy, which is, and I think it's a beautiful thing, where you use elements. You use, water, you use fire, you can light a candle, a small little candle at your desk, have a little aroma therapy as well. You can go ahead and use lights, use the ability to have shadows and colors. I have a series of these Philips Hue lights in our house, and it's wonderful. It's like being in a, having the ability to set up where the lights are by a tree or whatever. So you really have this wonderful sort of club atmosphere, or yeah, I think sort of a jazz club atmosphere if you want, or just bright lights or whatever. So that's, I think within the environment, there are so many ways that you can create an environment for yourself with color, with lights, with plants, with sounds, wonderful music, even the environmental sounds. We start talking about the environment. There's so many things that are man-made, if you will, that we start to lose track of those things that really do nourish us and feed us, that give us oxygen, plants, going outside, taking a walk, taking off your shoes and just feeling the earth beneath your feet, going up to a tree and looking at the tree and recognizing that this is the outside of the tree, but actually the root systems of trees go very deep, and there are many trees that are interconnected, and this is what's giving us the oxygen and the breath and the ability to not only have shade but also have wonderful environments. And it's feeding so many of the animals and so much nature. So there's so many ways of doing that. Water, we're fortunate enough here to live not far from Manhasset Bay, which is a wonderful sort of bay inlet, and just where we can walk down to the water. But if you don't have that, simply having something as simple as a bird bath and setting that up in your backyard, or a little bird feeder to go ahead and attract the birds. So there's so many ways of popping up the environment, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be very, very small, just a simple item, something that you treasure, something that's brings a sort of a good feeling to you. Even a small little, I have one of these, I've had a couple of them, but I've had these little Zen gardens, where all you have is a little rock and a little bit of sand, and all you do is you just rake the sand. It can be that small, but it brings a sense of joy and a sense of an internal perspective that our environments are not only the macro environments, but they're also very micro. What we talk about in the book is, as above, so below, as below, so above. So if you're able to create this environment around you, this environment outside of you, and you're able to create a pleasant environment that smells right, that sounds right, that looks nice, that brings up nice feelings, that really is very simple, and it's truly a joy. And I think more than anything, I take great joy in being able to have some plants and have a little garden, or have some nice music or some nice lights or whatever. They're very, very, very simple things, and they get us out of our head as well about what's going on in the big picture, and really allow us to control and be more in the immediate environment, which is really important. We can't control what goes on outside in the rest of the world, but we can control what goes on in our little spaces, and set it up appropriately. So
Yeah, I agree. It can be simple, but I think it's extremely powerful. And maybe everyone hasn't thought of that. That's something as simple as a little Zen garden. It can be something as simple as a photograph that you love, right? If it's
right.
right there on your desk, every time you look at it, you're coming back in that moment, experiencing whatever feelings are again. So
Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful thing when you're able to create a sense of the sacred.
Yes.
If you're able to create a sense of the sacred in your immediate environment, where you're reminded of the things that are, sacred to you, like your family, or your friends, or whatever it is. It could be your cat.
Mhm.
That's that's good. That's a wonderful thing. So,
Absolutely. I continue to run into people in the trainings that I do that are concerned about mindfulness and their religion. And
hmm,
you talk about this in the book, the difference between religion and spirituality. And I was wondering if you could perhaps share a little bit of that so that people can get a feel for how mindfulness does not need to interfere in any way with whatever religion you're practicing.
right. Well, I know that you know that I'm a interfaith minister. I did my MDiv in interfaith studies and world religions, and one of the things that I grew up, my father was Jewish, my mother was Catholic, and in the Catholic faith, you're the religion of your father, and in the Jewish faith, you're the religion of the mother. So I kind of fell somewhere in between the cracks, and it's been a very big study of mine. People will say, "Well, what religion are you?" And I say, "I'm a Judeo-Christian, Buddhist, Taoist, Hindu. Is there any question?" So, because I think there are many paths, but for many people, there's one truth. And the truth is, how are you, um, how are you breathing life into your relationships and the world around you, into people, places, and things, right? And and I talk about the difference between spirituality and religion is like the difference between, or the difference between religion and spirituality is like the difference between the menu and the meal. And that's a Joseph Campbell quote. And I love that quote because it really does talk about the fact that there are, and I use the other analogy that there are many, and I don't use this necessarily in the book, but there are many boats on the ocean, and some of them are like big cruise liners, and they've got lots of passengers, and they got a very clear destination, and they've got a schedule, and you follow the schedule and you follow the rules, and chances are they won't let you off the boat. You'll be able to make the destination, but at least that's the promise, right? And then there are some smaller boats, and then there are some people who are just on the ocean in a little dinghy, or maybe they're just swimming. But they're all on the same ocean. And the ocean of life, we talk about it, or all the religions talk about the waters of life. And the spirit of life. Even if you go to any church, they'll talk about the spirit of God. And again, back to the root word of spirit is breath. Spear, S-P-I-R, and or spear or breath, breathe it. Breathe it, spear it. And so, from a philosophical viewpoint, I guess the question is how are you breathing life into the world? And does your faith or does your religious path allow you to breathe life into the world and allow others to breathe life as well, regardless of what their path is? Yeah. Your way is not the only way. Your way is one way. And then the question is what is the truth? And the truth is that we all breathe life, that we all feel life. We all want to be seen, to be heard, to be recognized, to be appreciated and loved. Food, clothing, shelter, love, recognition. Those are the things that everyone wants, regardless of where you are in the world. Those are the things we all hope for, we live for, or we die for, that kind of liberty. And so that was a big part of that's a whole chapter in the book. And then we get into fundamentalism and talking about how does that work, or how doesn't it work, and how does it work for everyone, or how exclusionary is it, or how inclusive is it? And there are a lot of other things that we talk about. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because I believe that one of the most important aspects of mindfulness is, well, in addition to non-judgment, um, as far as when it gets to which religion, but it's really understanding that mindfulness doesn't supersede your spirituality or your religious practices. It's a way to just get more in touch with not only the inner you, but maybe what's the meta part, what's above you, what's beyond us. And so that
Right.
I really
Right.
appreciate that.
Right. And I love that. I love the definition of mindfulness as well. Being present in the moment without judgment. Essentially, that's the John Kabat-Zinn definition, and I'm abbreviating it, I'm sure. But I think there's one aspect of mindfulness that I really do like, probably more than anything, is the ability to gain recognition and choice, the ability to have a moment, even if it's 10 seconds, to take a breath, to stop, observe, take a breath, and then proceed, pause, and then proceed. So it's that whole idea of being able to make a different choice. And in the Buddhist worldview, that really is around changing your programming. There are so many people that are, well, they're sort of church or Sunday or religious. They have their they observe the faith at the moment that they're there, but then they'll go outside and they'll curse at someone or make a judgment or whatever. And then they kind of wonder, okay, why do I do that? Right? That's a lot of that is programming. A lot of that is you know culturally based programming that they've gotten from their mother, their father, the tribe that they're members of, if you will, and or some related trauma. So mindfulness, by taking that breath, by really being embodied in our bodies, we really do have the opportunity to pause and think about, well, what went on there? Why was that guy driving so fast? Or why is that person driving so slow, if that's the case, whatever. And I use that simply. And there are so many other analogies that we could use, but yeah, it really does give us the pause to really kind of think, okay, how can I show up as my best self, for myself as well as for others.
Exactly. And I again think it's so important. I mean, I think it's important in general, but I think it's extremely important right now as we go through this phase we're going through with so much divisiveness.
Hmm.
So, you touched on, we all have the same needs, we all have the same desires. And if we can just understand that instead of all of this divisiveness and rhetoric and judgment, and just take that pause, step back and try to be more mindful, I think it would make the world a much better place.
Wouldn't it?
I thank you so much for your time today. And again, the book is a fabulous, it's like a manual for how to really learn to live mindfully, focusing on these key 8 areas. And I really hope that our listeners will enjoy following along and expanding their mindfulness skills. So
You're
thank you
very
so much.
kind. Thank you very much, Teresa. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.